The princess whispered his name and changed the course of war. Its cities were built high above the ground, with bridges connecting towers that seemed to touch the clouds. From the marble balcony of the royal palace, Princess Liara looked down at the bustling streets below. The people moved with their daily rhythm, unaware that their world was on the edge of a storm that could consume everything. Liara was unlike other royals. While others of her age spent time in games and formal ceremonies, she preferred to watch, to listen, and to understand. Her father, King Urindor, ruled with a firm hand, preparing Solara for the looming war against the Kryn Empire. Soldiers marched in perfect lines across the palace grounds, their polished armor reflecting the sun's light. Warships glided silently through the skies, their engines humming like distant thunder. The sound was meant to reassure the people, but to Liara, it spoke of a future full of destruction. She had spent countless nights thinking about the wars that had shaped Orlaia. Her mother had often told her stories of bravery, of humans rising against impossible odds, and of how intelligence and compassion could overcome force. Liara remembered those stories vividly. She believed them, more than the threats of generals and advisors who claimed that only strength could keep their world safe. One evening, as the suns dipped behind the horizon, Liara wandered to the palace library. The halls were silent, filled only with the scent of ancient parchment and the soft echoes of her footsteps. She moved past towering shelves, her fingers tracing the spines of books that had survived centuries. Some spoke of science, others of history, and a few of distant stars beyond Orlaia. But she had recently begun searching for something different, something that might change the fate of her people. Her interest had been piqued by rumors whispered through secret channels. A message had appeared in the palace's encrypted system, one that even the most skilled advisors could not fully decipher. It spoke of a man named Kale, a strategist and thinker from the Kryn Empire, whose intellect alone could change the course of the war. Few had heard of him, and even fewer knew his true motives. The name Kale had become almost mythical, carried in hushed tones as both a warning and a hope. Liara had spent nights pondering the significance of this figure. Unlike the generals, Kale did not appear to favor violence. The message suggested he sought a way to end the war, not escalate it. That idea fascinated Liara. Perhaps there was someone on the other side who believed, as she did, that reason and understanding could triumph over fear. Unable to sleep, Liara returned to her balcony that night. The twin moons of Orlaia rose slowly, casting a silver glow over the palace. The city below was quiet now, the streets empty except for the occasional patrol. Liara whispered Kale's name softly, letting it roll off her tongue. "Kale," she murmured, "if you truly exist, I hope we can find each other before it is too late." That whisper was carried away by the wind, and though no one else heard it, the act itself seemed to anchor her resolve. Liara decided she would find Kale, no matter the cost. She could feel it in her bones, the sense that a single person, a single choice, could alter the fate of billions. The next morning she attended the Council of War. The room was vast, filled with the kingdom's most experienced generals and advisors. They spoke of troop movements, supply lines, and defensive strategies, their words sharp and precise. Liara listened carefully, her mind weaving through the plans, searching for flaws that might be corrected before they became disasters. The council spoke of the Kryn fleet approaching the northern sector. Their weapons had been enhanced with new technology, and the generals predicted that if Solara struck first, they might gain the upper hand. But Liara remained silent. She saw the risk of such action, of lives lost for no reason other than fear and pride. She watched the faces of the generals, noting how their eyes gleamed with the thrill of command, how easily they had forgotten the people who would pay the true price. When the council concluded, Liara excused herself and returned to the library. She needed answers, not strategies. The encrypted message about Kale was still fresh in her mind. She accessed the hidden archives of the palace, sifting through layers of security to locate any record of this mysterious figure. Hours passed, her eyes growing tired, but she did not stop. Finally, she found a fragment of information, a report from a Kryn scholar who had been exiled for speaking against the Empire's endless war. The report described Kale not as a soldier or a general, but as a thinker, a scientist who had refused to create weapons that could destroy entire planets. The Kryn Empire had cast him out, fearing his ideas, yet even in exile, he had continued to search for a solution to end the war without further bloodshed. Liara's heart leapt. Here was someone who shared her vision, someone who might understand that the power of the mind was greater than the power of weapons. Over the following days, Liara began to plan. She had to reach Kale, but the journey would be perilous. Kryn territory was vast and heavily monitored. To travel openly would be impossible. She could not rely on her royal status to protect her. Instead, she began studying the stars, plotting secret routes that would take her beyond the borders of her world. She learned to read the signals of patrol ships, to navigate through asteroid fields, and to communicate in code. Each skill brought her closer to the unknown figure she hoped to meet. Despite the danger, Liara felt a sense of freedom she had never known. For the first time, she was not merely a princess. She was a seeker of change, a force that could challenge fate itself. She moved quietly through the palace, avoiding the eyes of her advisors, and gathered the tools she would need for her journey: maps, navigational devices, and supplies for weeks of travel. Each item was chosen with care, each decision weighed for safety and necessity. One night, as she prepared for departure, Liara looked once more over the city. The palace towers rose behind her, the lights of the floating forests shimmering in the distance. The twin moons reflected in her eyes, and she felt the weight of her choice. She whispered Kale's name again, this time with determination. "Kale, I will find you, and together we will change the course of this war." With that promise, she slipped out of the palace, moving through hidden corridors and stairways that led to the outskirts of the city. A small shuttle awaited her, hidden beneath the cliffs near the floating forests. It was a simple craft, capable of navigating the narrow space routes and dodging the patrolling ships. Liara climbed aboard, her hands steady despite the excitement and fear coursing through her. She took one last look at Orlia, the planet she had loved since birth, and whispered Kale's name once more, a prayer carried on the wind of the upper atmosphere. The shuttle launched smoothly, rising above the clouds and into the star-strewn expanse of space. Liara's heart raced as she navigated through asteroid fields and sensor grids, keeping to the shadows to avoid detection. For hours, she flew in silence, the hum of the engines her only companion. She thought of the people below, the families who slept unaware of the war that could destroy them. She thought of Kale, wherever he was, and wondered if he could even imagine that a princess would risk everything to find him. As she approached the outer edges of Kryn territory, her shuttle passed a cluster of derelict stations and forgotten satellites. Here, she realized, was the perfect place to make contact with Kale without drawing attention. She adjusted her course, preparing to send a coded message through the secure channels she had learned to use. "Kale," she whispered once more, her voice trembling with hope, "I am coming. Trust me and we can end this together." A moment later, the message was sent, encoded with every precaution she could think of. Now all she could do was wait, her eyes fixed on the black expanse ahead, hoping that the figure she had sought for so long would respond. Hours passed, stretching into days, but Liara remained patient. She explored small moons, dodged patrols, and kept her presence hidden. She listened to the quiet hum of the universe, feeling a connection to something greater than herself. And then, one evening, as the twin suns of another system set in brilliant colors, a signal flashed on her control panel. It was faint, almost imperceptible but unmistakable. A response from Kale. Liara's hands shook as she decoded it. His words were simple yet filled with understanding. I know you are coming. Prepare wisely. Together, we can change what seems inevitable. Relief washed over her, but it was quickly followed by renewed determination. The journey was far from over, but now she knew she was not alone. Someone believed in her vision as much as she did. Someone was waiting to turn the tides of war with her. Liara stared out into the stars, feeling the weight of destiny settle upon her shoulders. The path ahead would be dangerous, filled with challenges she could not yet imagine. But for the first time, hope burned brightly within her heart. The whisper of a name, Kale, had set her on a path that could reshape the fate of Orlia and perhaps the entire galaxy. And as her shuttle disappeared into the darkness of space, carrying her toward the unknown, Liara whispered once more, a vow to herself and to the universe. Kale, we will succeed. The stars stretched endlessly before her, and in their quiet light, a story of courage, wisdom, and hope began to unfold. Liara's shuttle glided silently through the darkness of space, weaving carefully between asteroids and debris fields. The stars stretched endlessly around her, each one a tiny point of light in the vast, quiet universe. She had never felt so small, yet so determined. Her mission was dangerous, but it was one she could not abandon. Kale existed, and with him, the chance to save Orlia from destruction. The days in the shuttle were long and lonely. Liara maintained her routines, checking instruments, monitoring communications, and reviewing maps of the Kryn territories she would soon have to cross. She had prepared as much as possible, but space was unpredictable, and every moment carried risk. Still, the thought of meeting Kale gave her courage. Every whisper of his name in her mind strengthened her resolve. She remembered the words he had sent in response to her message. I know you are coming. Prepare wisely. Together we can change what seems inevitable. The simplicity of the words carried a weight she could feel deep in her chest. Someone understood her. Someone shared her vision. That thought warmed her during the long hours when silence and darkness threatened to overwhelm her. Liara adjusted her course toward the coordinates Kale had sent. The asteroid field grew denser as she approached, and she had to maneuver carefully to avoid collision. Her fingers danced over the controls, her focus absolute. The shuttle hummed in response, a steady companion in the cold emptiness. She thought of Orlia, of the floating forests and shining cities, and of the people she might save. She had never felt such responsibility before. After several tense hours, she reached a small, hidden station nestled among the asteroids. It was old and simple, built long ago for scientific observation. Its hull was scarred by micrometeorites, and some panels flickered with weak lights. Despite its appearance, Liara could sense the intelligence behind its construction. Someone had built this place to last, to survive the harshness of space. Someone like Kale. She landed the shuttle gently on a narrow platform and cut the engines. Silence returned, deeper than anything she had known before. She took a deep breath and opened the hatch, stepping out into the station's entrance corridor. The air smelled faintly of ozone and metal, and the dim lighting cast long shadows along the walls. Liara felt a thrill of anticipation. She was close, very close. Her footsteps echoed softly as she moved through the station, her eyes adjusting to the low light. The corridors twisted like a labyrinth, but she followed the instructions Kale had sent carefully. At last, she reached a room filled with devices and screens, wires connecting machines in intricate patterns. And there, standing beside a console and examining data with intense focus, was Kale. He looked up at her presence immediately. His eyes, sharp and thoughtful, measured her with curiosity and caution. He was not a warrior, that was clear. His clothing was simple, practical for work rather than battle, and his hands bore the faint stains of a scientist's labor. Yet there was a quiet strength in him, a sense that he understood the universe in ways others could not. "Princess Liara," he said, his voice steady but careful, "I was beginning to wonder if you would make it." Liara smiled, though nerves fluttered in her stomach. "I had to," she replied. "The war, it cannot continue. We need a solution that does not end in destruction." Kale nodded slowly, stepping aside to allow her to approach the central console. "I agree. That is why I am here, working on something they could never imagine. Weapons will only bring more death, but if we can create a way to stop them safely, we can give both sides a chance to survive." He turned the screens toward her, displaying schematics and diagrams that were both complex and beautiful. Lines and symbols moved in patterns that suggested energy flows, shields, and communication arrays. Liara's eyes widened as she began to understand. This was not just a plan to stop a single attack. It was a system that could neutralize weapons across the battlefield without harm to anyone. "This is remarkable," Liara said, her voice filled with awe. "But how will we convince the others?" "The generals will not accept this easily. They see war as inevitable as necessary," Kale sighed. "They are afraid. They cannot yet see that fear itself can be defeated with knowledge. That is why you are here, Liara. Your influence, your courage, can bridge the gap between reason and tradition." Liara felt a surge of determination. She had known it would not be easy, but hearing Kale's confidence made her feel stronger. "Then we will find a way," she said firmly. "We will show them that another path exists. We will end this war without the loss of countless lives." Kale studied her closely, then nodded. "We will need to move carefully. The Kryn Empire does not trust outsiders easily, and the Solara generals will question any method that seems unconventional. We must be precise, methodical, and patient." For days, Liara stayed at the station, learning the intricacies of Kale's designs. He explained the principles behind the device, how it could disable weapons without causing harm, and how it could be deployed across multiple fleets at once. Liara listened intently, absorbing every detail. Her mind worked quickly, connecting the information to what she knew of Solara's resources and strategy. During their work, they shared stories of their lives. Kale spoke of his exile, of the choices he had made to refuse weapons that could annihilate entire planets. Liara spoke of her childhood in the palace, of the lessons her parents had taught her, and of her desire to protect her people. In the quiet moments between calculations, they discovered a shared belief that intelligence, courage, and compassion could overcome even the greatest challenges. Despite the seriousness of their mission, there were moments of lightness. Liara laughed at Kale's dry humor, and Kale admired her clever solutions to technical problems. They worked side by side, united by a common purpose, their bond growing stronger with each passing hour. It was not a bond of romance, but of respect and trust, the kind that could withstand the weight of destiny. One night, as the twin suns of Orlia's neighboring system set in distant space, Liara gazed out of the station's viewport. The colors of the nebulae reflected on her face, painting her in shades of violet and gold. She felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. They had made significant progress, but the challenge ahead was immense. The fleets of both empires were vast, and convincing their leaders to adopt Kale's plan would be no small task. Kale joined her at the viewport, his expression thoughtful. "We are ready," he said quietly. "The device is nearly complete. Once deployed, it will demonstrate the possibility of peace in a way no speech or plea ever could." Liara nodded. "But first, we must reach the right people. The Council of Solara Generals. They must understand the importance of what we are about to do. And Kryn, we must find a way to communicate with those who will listen." Kale's eyes met hers. "That will require courage. You have that in abundance, Liara. Your presence, your voice, will carry the message in ways that logic alone cannot." Liara took a deep breath, feeling the enormity of the task. Yet fear did not overpower her determination. She had risked everything to reach Kale, and now, with him by her side, she knew they could challenge the cycle of war. The thought gave her strength. The next step of their plan involved returning to Solara, but not openly. Liara could not reveal herself yet. The council might prevent her from acting, seeing her only as a young princess with idealistic notions. Instead, they prepared a small, hidden shuttle to carry Kale and essential components of the device into Solara's territory undetected. The journey would be dangerous, but careful navigation and stealth could succeed. As they worked, Liara and Kale also considered the reactions of the soldiers. Most had been trained only to fight, to follow orders without question. Changing their minds would require more than explanations. It would require evidence, demonstrations of the device's effectiveness, and inspiration from leaders who believed in a different way of thinking. Liara understood that her role was crucial. She would need to inspire trust, to whisper Kale's name and what it represented in moments where doubt and fear threatened to take hold. The day of departure arrived. Liara felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness as they loaded the shuttle with the equipment necessary for the mission. Kale checked each component meticulously, ensuring that nothing would fail once they reached Solara. Liara assisted him, her hands steady despite the tension. Together, they completed the preparations, ready to take the first step toward ending the war. As the shuttle lifted off from the hidden station, Liara glanced back one last time. The asteroid field and the station receded into the distance, becoming tiny points in the vastness of space. Ahead lay Solara, and with it, the councils, fleets, and the fate of countless lives. She whispered Kale's name softly, feeling the connection between them, the shared hope that had brought them this far. The journey was long and silent, but Liara remained vigilant. She monitored communications, adjusted the course, and kept Kale informed of any anomalies. They passed through regions of space where patrols were frequent, and each time they evaded detection, their confidence grew. By the time they approached Solara, they were ready to act, prepared to present a solution that could change history. Liara's thoughts turned to the people of her world. She imagined the citizens, unaware of the danger they faced, going about their lives in peace. She imagined soldiers lowering their weapons, leaders choosing dialogue over destruction, and families celebrating survival instead of mourning loss. That vision gave her courage. It reminded her why she had whispered Kale's name, why she had risked everything, and why she would continue to do so. As the shuttle entered Solara's outer atmosphere, Liara and Kale prepared for the next phase. They would need to be discreet, clever, and persuasive. But more than anything, they needed belief in themselves and each other, and in the possibility of a future without war. Liara felt her heart steady, her mind sharp, and her spirit ready. She had taken the first step toward changing the course of history, and with Kale by her side, there was no turning back. Together, they would face the challenges ahead, guided by intelligence, courage, and the hope that a single idea, carried by a whisper, could save millions. And as they approached the gleaming cities of Solara, the floating forests reflecting sunlight in brilliant patterns, Liara whispered once more, softly but with unwavering conviction, "Kale, together, we will make a difference." The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if responding to her words. In that moment, the galaxy felt alive with possibility, and the story of two minds united by hope and purpose was only beginning. Liara's shuttle descended through the soft clouds of Solara, careful to remain hidden from the eyes of the palace guards. Kale watched her work in silence, trusting her skill and patience. Every movement mattered now. A single mistake could reveal them too early and destroy the opportunity to change the course of the war. Liara had spent months preparing, studying the patrol patterns, the council's schedule, and even the habits of her own advisors. Every detail had been accounted for. Finally, they arrived at a small, secluded platform near the outskirts of the city. It was a place rarely used, hidden behind a grove of floating trees that shimmered with sunlight. Liara landed the shuttle gently, holding her breath as the engines quieted. She glanced at Kale, who gave a slight nod of approval. Together they disembarked, carrying the essential components of Kale's device carefully. The journey from the platform to the palace was quiet, but tense. Liara moved with confidence, masking her nerves behind calm expressions. Kale followed her, studying the surroundings with the meticulous attention of someone accustomed to danger. The streets were largely empty at this hour, the citizens unaware that the future of their world was quietly being carried through these paths. As they approached the palace, Liara whispered instructions. "The council meeting is tonight. We will need to reach the chamber without attracting attention. Follow my lead and trust the plan." Kale nodded, his eyes reflecting a mixture of anticipation and concern. He had prepared for this moment intellectually, but the reality of stepping into enemy territory, even on friendly ground, was daunting. Yet, standing beside Liara, he felt a sense of purpose stronger than fear. They entered through a little-used service entrance, moving through corridors that led directly beneath the council chamber. Liara guided Kale with precision, knowing the layout better than anyone outside the guards. Her training, her attention to detail, and her knowledge of the palace's secrets had brought them this far. Finally, they reached a hidden observation area overlooking the council chamber. The room was vast and filled with Solara's most powerful generals and advisors. They spoke in firm, confident tones, discussing strategies and troop deployments as if the future had already been decided. Liara's heart ached at the sight. The words they exchanged were sharp, focused on victory at any cost, while she and Kale were carrying the chance to prevent destruction entirely. Kale's gaze followed her carefully. "How do we begin?" he asked quietly. Liara took a deep breath. "We must start with trust. I will speak first, and you will show them the device. Let them see the solution before they reject it." The council had begun to adjourn when Liara stepped forward, her voice calm but commanding. "Esteemed council members, I ask your attention. There is a way to prevent the war from destroying our world, to protect our people, and to secure peace for both Solara and Kryn." The generals turned, their expressions a mixture of surprise and skepticism. Murmurs filled the chamber. A princess speaking of peace and solutions rather than commands was unusual. Liara ignored the murmurs, her eyes focused on the council members she needed to reach. Kale stepped forward, bringing a small projection device to the center of the room. With a few precise movements, he activated it, and the schematics of his creation appeared in holographic light above the table. Lines, symbols, and flowing patterns of energy danced in the air, illustrating how the device could neutralize weapons without harm. The generals leaned closer, intrigued despite themselves. Kale explained patiently, demonstrating how the system would disable offensive capabilities of both sides simultaneously. He showed simulations of fleets rendered harmless, not through destruction but through intelligence and precision. Liara's voice joined his, reinforcing the message. "This is not magic, nor is it a trick. It is the product of knowledge, careful planning, and the hope that we can choose a different path. We do not need to fight. We need to act wisely." There was silence in the chamber. Some generals looked skeptical, others bewildered. They had been trained to fight, to command armies, and to trust strength above all else. The idea of winning without combat was foreign, almost impossible to accept. But the clarity of Kale's demonstration, combined with Liara's calm conviction, planted a seed of possibility. One of the older generals spoke first, his voice cautious. "And you believe this device can truly stop the Kryn fleet without firing a single shot?" Kale met his gaze steadily. "I do. It is built to override weapon systems safely without harming crews or civilians. It is the first step toward ending the war peacefully. The choice to deploy it must be made wisely, but the potential is real." Liara stepped closer, her eyes scanning the council. "We cannot wait for the perfect moment. Every day that passes brings us closer to destruction. The Kryn fleet is mobilizing, and if we act only with force, we will lose countless lives. We must act now together." The council murmured among themselves. Some were clearly struggling with disbelief, while others began to see the potential. Liara continued, whispering Kale's name softly in her mind, focusing on the courage and intelligence he represented. That whisper, repeated silently, reminded her of their shared mission and strengthened her resolve. Hours passed as Liara and Kale answered questions, explained details, and demonstrated the effectiveness of the device. Slowly, the council's resistance began to falter. They saw that the solution was not a gamble but a calculated method designed to protect their people. Kale's calm intelligence combined with Liara's confidence created a new perspective, one that opened minds previously closed to hope. Finally, the head of the council, General Tharos, leaned back in his chair. His expression was serious, contemplative. "If what you say is true, this changes everything. We have prepared for war, but this could prevent it entirely. Are you certain there are no hidden dangers?" Kale nodded. "I have tested every scenario. The system is safe, precise, and reliable. There is no risk to civilians or soldiers when used correctly. It requires coordination and trust, but it is the first real opportunity for peace in decades." Liara's voice, firm yet kind, carried across the chamber. "Trust is difficult, I know. But we must act, not out of fear but out of wisdom. If we can prevent war, then every life saved is a testament to what we can achieve when we choose intelligence over destruction." There was a long pause. The generals and advisors exchanged looks, weighing the possibility against years of training, fear, and tradition. Finally, one of the younger commanders spoke. "If this works, it will change the way we fight wars forever. Perhaps we should try it." Liara felt a surge of relief. The first step had been taken. With careful planning, Kale's device could be deployed, and the Solara fleet could act without firing a single weapon. But the challenge was far from over. They still needed to ensure that Kryn would not misinterpret the act, that the device would be seen as a gesture of peace, not weakness. Over the next days, Liara and Kale worked tirelessly. They coordinated with key officers in the Solara fleet, sharing detailed instructions and training a small team to operate the device. Liara's leadership and Kale's knowledge blended seamlessly, inspiring confidence in those around them. Soldiers began to believe that there was another way, that war was not the only path to security. At the same time, Liara sent secret communications to Kryn. Carefully crafted messages emphasized that Solara did not seek victory through destruction, but peace through intelligence and restraint. The messages hinted at Kale's involvement, portraying him as a neutral force committed to saving lives on both sides. It was a delicate balance, requiring diplomacy, patience, and careful planning. Even as preparations continued, tension remained high. Many officers and council members still struggled with fear. The concept of stopping a war without fighting was so foreign that some could barely accept it. Liara's calm presence, her unwavering confidence, and her whispered reminder of Kale's wisdom helped steady the nerves of all who were involved. On the day of the operation, the Solara fleet assembled near the northern sector. Liara and Kale monitored from the command center, their eyes fixed on the holographic displays of fleet positions. The officers under their guidance were ready, each one understanding the importance of precision, trust, and patience. As the fleets of both Solara and Kryn came into view, Liara whispered Kale's name softly, a mantra that carried hope and courage. "Kale, this is our moment. Together, we can change the course of history." Kale nodded, activating the device. A pulse of energy spread through the systems of the Solara fleet, synchronizing with the instructions of the operators. The weapons, shields, and communication arrays adjusted seamlessly, rendering offensive systems inactive without harm to the crews. Liara watched, her heart racing, as the same pulse reached the Kryn fleet. Slowly, their weapons powered down as well, and their formations held steady, confusion visible on their command displays. For the first time in decades, two empires faced each other not with destruction, but with the possibility of dialogue and understanding. The council and fleet officers of Solara held their breath, waiting for a response. Then messages from Kryn arrived. Carefully worded, cautious, and respectful, they acknowledged the action and the potential for negotiations. Liara allowed herself a small smile. The first step had succeeded. Liara and Kale exchanged a look of quiet triumph. Their months of planning, risk, and courage had paid off. A single whispered name, repeated in moments of uncertainty and fear, had guided them to this point. The device, the trust, and the shared vision of peace had made a difference. As both fleets held their positions, ready for dialogue rather than battle, Liara felt the weight of what they had achieved. The war had not ended completely, but the cycle of fear and violence had been broken. Hope had returned, fragile but real, and the possibility of a new future glimmered on the horizon. Liara's eyes met Kale's once more, and she whispered softly, "We have begun, Kale, together. We will finish this." The stars above shone brightly, as if acknowledging their courage and determination. The story of a princess and a scientist, united by intelligence, courage, and hope, was far from over. But the first step had been taken, and for the first time the people of Solara, and perhaps Kryn, could imagine a future without war. The twin suns of Orlai arose slowly, casting warm light over the floating forests and shining cities. Liara stood on the balcony of the palace, watching the world awaken beneath her. It had been days since the fleets of Solara and Kryn had faced each other without fighting, and the results were slowly becoming clear. A fragile peace had begun to take root, nurtured by intelligence, trust, and the courage of those willing to act differently. Kale stood beside her, his gaze calm and steady. The soft hum of the palace morning contrasted sharply with the chaos that had once threatened their world. Liara turned to him, her eyes reflecting gratitude and determination. "It's working," she said softly. "The fleets are holding their positions, and the communications from Kryn show they are willing to negotiate, but we must guide them carefully. One wrong step and it could all fall apart." Kale nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Yes. Diplomacy is delicate, but this is what we hoped for. Our actions have opened the door. Now it is up to the leaders to walk through it." Over the following hours, Liara and Kale worked with both Solara and Kryn representatives. Secure holographic communications were established, allowing the generals and leaders of both sides to speak without fear of interception. Liara's calm voice and careful explanations helped ease the tension. She emphasized the importance of understanding, trust, and collaboration, showing that strength was not measured only by weapons but by wisdom and restraint. In a private meeting, Liara addressed the Solara Council once more. "We have seen the power of intelligence over force," she said. "The Kryn fleet is not our enemy. Their soldiers are like ours, fighting for their homes, for their families. If we continue to view them as enemies, we lose sight of our humanity. Kale's device has shown us another way, but the real challenge is changing hearts and minds. We must choose dialogue over destruction." Some generals were still hesitant, their minds shaped by decades of military training and fear. But Liara's unwavering belief, combined with Kale's clear evidence, began to sway even the most skeptical. Slowly, the council agreed to extend a formal invitation for peace talks, under the guidance of neutral observers and with careful monitoring of the fleets. Kale's device remained active, silently ensuring that no weapons could be fired during the negotiations. Soldiers from both sides observed its effect, seeing the futility of aggression and the value of restraint. In the camps, officers whispered among themselves, realizing that the war they had prepared for might no longer be necessary. Confidence grew, but it was tempered by the awareness that trust must be earned and maintained. As the peace talks began, Liara observed from the main chamber of the palace, where representatives of both Solara and Kryn gathered. She saw the fear, hope, and cautious optimism in the eyes of the delegates. Many had never imagined a world without constant conflict, and the sudden possibility was both thrilling and intimidating. Kale worked alongside Liara, offering technical explanations and ensuring that the device's function was clear to all. His calm presence reassured the delegates, and his patience allowed them to ask questions without fear. Liara whispered his name softly in her mind, a reminder of the courage and vision that had brought them this far. The first hours of discussion were tense. Words were chosen carefully, and each statement carried weight. But gradually, understanding began to emerge. The delegates shared stories of their people, their homes, and their families. They realized that the other side was not a faceless enemy, but human beings with hopes and fears much like their own. Liara's heart swelled with cautious optimism. She had always believed that intelligence and empathy could overcome fear and aggression, and now she saw it happening before her eyes. Kale's device had created the opportunity, but it was the willingness of leaders and soldiers to see beyond conflict that was shaping the future. As the negotiations continued, Liara noticed subtle shifts in body language, changes in tone, and the emergence of small agreements. Both sides began to discuss trade, resource sharing, and cultural exchanges. The idea of a ceasefire became reality, and plans were made to gradually reduce the presence of troops along the borders. The atmosphere in the chamber changed from tension to cautious cooperation. Liara and Kale remained vigilant. They knew that one misunderstanding could unravel everything, but with each passing hour, their confidence grew. The knowledge that a single device, combined with courage and wisdom, could prevent destruction strengthened their resolve. They also realized that the real work had just begun, the work of building lasting trust between two empires that had fought for generations. Outside the palace, the citizens of Orlia began to notice the change. Soldiers lowered their weapons, banners of war were taken down, and the city slowly returned to its daily rhythm. People whispered stories of the princess who had acted with courage and a scientist who had given hope to a weary world. Their actions inspired ordinary citizens, showing that even the smallest voices, guided by intelligence and bravery, could have a profound impact. Liara took a moment to walk among the people, feeling their relief and cautious joy. She smiled at children playing in the streets, waved to families tending gardens in the floating forests, and listened to the laughter that had been missing for so long. The world was not yet perfect, but it was on a new path, one that promised growth, understanding, and cooperation. Kale accompanied her, observing quietly. He understood that change was gradual and that trust had to be nurtured carefully. He also saw the impact of Liara's presence, the calm, confident leadership that inspired people to believe in something greater than themselves. Together, they represented the possibility of a future shaped by knowledge, courage, and empathy rather than fear and violence. During one evening council meeting, the Kryn delegates expressed their appreciation for Solara's actions. "We have seen that peace is possible," one of them said. "Your willingness to act without aggression has given us hope. Let this be the beginning of a new era for both our worlds." Liara felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Every whispered name, every careful action had led to this moment. The war that had threatened to engulf Orlia was no longer inevitable. A single choice, guided by courage and intelligence, had shifted the balance. The next days were filled with planning for reconstruction and cooperation. Both Solara and Kryn leaders worked together to establish shared programs for education, science, and exploration. Liara and Kale remained at the center of these efforts, advising, guiding, and inspiring those around them. The device that had once been a tool for preventing conflict became a symbol of what could be achieved when minds worked together for the greater good. Liara often returned to her balcony, looking out over the floating forests and shining cities. She thought of the journey that had brought her here, from a princess who had whispered a name in hope to a leader who had helped change the course of history. Kale's presence beside her reminded her that collaboration and trust were as important as courage and vision. One evening, as the twin suns set and painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and violet, Liara whispered Kale's name softly. "Kale, we did it. We truly did it." Kale smiled, his eyes reflecting both relief and pride. "Yes, Liara. Together, we proved that knowledge and courage can achieve what fear and force never could. This is just the beginning, but it is a beginning filled with hope." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the world below. The citizens of Orlia moved through their lives with renewed energy, unaware of how close they had come to destruction. The fleets of both empires had withdrawn, and the first steps toward reconciliation and cooperation were underway. Liara felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The mission that had seemed impossible was now reality, and the future was full of potential. In the months that followed, Liara and Kale continued to guide both empires. Schools were rebuilt, trade routes reopened, and new alliances formed. The story of the princess who whispered a name and the scientist who acted wisely spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring others to choose intelligence, empathy, and courage over violence. Liara often reflected on the power of a single decision. The whisper of a name, repeated in moments of uncertainty, had carried hope across space and time. Kale's wisdom and patience, combined with her courage and leadership, had created a new path for millions. The war that had seemed inevitable was now a memory, replaced by a future built on cooperation and understanding. One day, as they watched the twin suns rise over Orlia, Liara turned to Kale. "We have done more than stop a war," she said. "We have shown that intelligence, courage, and compassion can change the course of history. The galaxy will never forget this." Kale nodded, his gaze steady. "And it all began with a simple whisper, one name spoken in hope. That is the power we carry, the power to change the future when we act with wisdom and heart." Liara smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility and the joy of accomplishment. The journey had been long and filled with challenges, but every step had been worth it. Together, they had altered the destiny of Orlia, proving that even in the darkest moments, hope, intelligence, and courage could prevail. As the twin suns bathed the floating forests in golden light, Liara and Kale looked toward the stars, imagining the new possibilities ahead. Exploration, discovery, learning, and cooperation awaited. The galaxy was vast, full of potential, and their story was just one of many that would shape its future. And so, Orlia began a new era. Wars became stories of the past, remembered as lessons rather than inevitabilities. Leaders learned to value dialogue and wisdom, soldiers remembered the strength of restraint, and citizens embraced hope as a guiding principle. Liara and Kale continued to work together, not as ruler and advisor, but as partners in the pursuit of knowledge, peace, and understanding. Every whisper, every careful action, every decision made with courage and intelligence had contributed to this new world. And the galaxy watched, inspired by the tale of a princess who whispered a name and changed the course of war. The stars above shone with brilliance, as if celebrating the triumph of hope over fear, wisdom over aggression, and courage over despair. And somewhere in the quiet vastness of space, new stories were beginning, stories shaped by the courage of those who dared to act differently. Liara whispered once more, softly, almost to herself, "Kale, together, we have changed everything." And in that whisper, the promise of a brighter future echoed across Orlia and beyond, a testament to the power of intelligence, courage, and the simple act of believing in a better way. The princess whispered his name, and change the course of war.